Hi, in this last module, we're going to talk about the idea of regional advantage and how it applies to the artisanal foods business in Santa Cruz County, California. This is the third of three segments about applying ideas from high tech to the small business in general. The diagram you see here is from a man named Michael Porter. Michael Porter married economics and business thinking in the 70s. His first book was Competitive Strategy, and his second book was Competitive Advantage. And what he did was create a more rigorous framework for analyzing the performance and the performance drivers of companies. And that was this fusion of economics and business. And then he wrote a third book called The Competitive Advantage of Nations. And the key idea there was the inherent assets of certain countries, or in our case regions, make certain industries more or less competitive. And those four items that very much interrelate to each other are factor conditions. This is the conditions around any input to the business, that's a factor. Demand conditions, which is about demand, but interestingly, it's more about the quality and type of demand than the quantity of demand. Related and supporting industries are partners and businesses that otherwise complement the industry in question. And the last item is firm strategy, structure, and rivalry. This is how big are the firms in the industry in question? How do they compete with each other? How do they approach their business? First item is factor conditions. Basic factors are not drivers of competitive advantage. An example of a basic factor in the case of the Penny Ice Creamery would be organic milk. Maybe an advanced factor 5 or 6 years ago, but not anymore. And likewise, just because your country, your region has a lot of trees doesn't mean you're going to have a great woodworking industry. Wood is a basic factor. It's fungible, saleable in the global markets. Advanced and particularly specialized factors are constantly upgraded, and that's the thing that really drives competitive advantage with regard to factor conditions. And examples of that in the case of the penny are Verve Coffee, which is an artisanal coffee shop that supplies inputs to the penny, and its artisanal staff, the artisanal food enthusiasts, organic food enthusiasts that are in Santa Cruz County that work for the penny, have this specialized knowledge. And another example is a man named Freddie, who is a forager. He goes and finds these exotic ingredients. He's been doing this for quite a long time, and that serves to keep the flavor palette that the penny is able to offer unique, interesting, rich in stories and ideas about what artisanal food can be. There are a couple of things that drive the ongoing improvement of these advanced and specialized factors. One is demand conditions, and that's this interrelationship between factor conditions and demand conditions. The sophistication of buyers drives the ongoing improvement of factors, and so in Santa Cruz County, the amount of sophisticated consumers of gourmet and artisanal foods helps drive these good factor conditions. Places like Verve Coffee, people like the artisanal staff. And the other interesting thing is that it's often factor disadvantages that drive the competitiveness of the factor environment. So for example, in the area, the San Francisco Bay Area, things are expensive. If you're going to, land's expensive. If you're going to farm, you need to be farming something relatively high value to be able to make a business out of it. And that's one of the things that's really driven the ongoing improvement of artisanal and organic farming ingredients. The next item we have is demand conditions. And the most important thing about demand conditions is not just the quantity of demand, but its quality. So for example, the United States is competitive in software, and that's because, particularly web software, and that's because we have a very large critical mass of internet users, and we've had it for a very long time. And for example, now the US-based companies like Apple and Google are leaders in mobile, but that's only a relatively recent thing over the last 5 years or so. Prior to that, it was companies like Nokia and Ericsson that were leading in mobile, and that's because the Europeans were ahead of us on demand, on the things that they wanted to do and were doing with their mobile phones. And could Motorola, a US-based company, go out and find out about what the Europeans are doing? Of course, definitely. In fact, they probably have thousands of employees in Europe, but it's a case in point that it's much better. It's always better to have the sophisticated buyers in your home market, because there's no substitute for being elbow to elbow with those people. And we talked about the personas earlier. That was very influential for the Penny. When they were vetting, creating their ideas about the business, they were elbow to elbow with lots of sophisticated buyers, consumers of artisanal foods. Related and supporting industries are complementary or partners to the industry in question. For the Penny, that's the artisanal foods industry. Dirty Girl Farms is one example, and they are a supplier to the Penny, but they're also, for instance, Penny is participating in the Real Foods Festival in Oakland, California at Dirty Girl's request. So there is a more than just a supplier relationship there, and that's common for the Penny with a lot of these folks that they collaborate with. And the farmers market is for artisanal and organic foods is another place, classic example, buyers and sellers transacting, and this thing gaining very large critical mass in many different places across the Bay Area over time. Tourism is another big one, very big in Santa Cruz County, and it's, for instance, the Beach Street Inn and Suites near the wharf in Santa Cruz that invited the Penny, recruited the Penny to come in and open up another restaurant. This one is called the Picnic Basket. The last of the forces in this framework is firm strategy, structure, and rivalry. And the artisanal foods industry in Santa Cruz is one of a lot of small firms with a disposition to collaborate. There are small firms that are generally run by the artisans, direct business participants, and the ideas around why artisanal foods and organic foods are important bind these folks together and further dispose them to collaborate together. It's interesting, these have a lot of analogs in Michael Porter's analysis of the small batch clothes and shoewear industry in Italy. These firms are run by artisans, generally hereditary, and it's this idea of Italy as a leader in fashion that binds them together to further to collaborate. In summary, on factor conditions for the artisanal foods business in Santa Cruz County, we have the UCSC interest in sustainable practices. This helps create a pool of people that are interested and highly able in to participate in this business. Artisanal producers. On demand conditions, you have a very large per capita collection of sophisticated buyers of organic and artisanal foods. On related and supporting industries, you have a vibrant entertainment industry downtown on the wharf. Penny, it wouldn't have been possible without a vibrant downtown, and a vibrant Penny likewise enhances the downtown. The farmers market is another example of a critical mass industry that's to help support the Penny. And firm strategy, structure, and rivalry, you have small, nimble, artisan-driven firms bonded by purpose, and that enhances the regional advantage of Santa Cruz for Penny and as a participant in this industry of artisanal foods. Thanks. I'm at Cowan SF on Twitter, and the resources for entrepreneurs, people that are working on technology-based businesses and business at large on alexandercowan.com.